Good evening. Welcome to the American Dream. Surprise. We have an election result, and President-elect Donald Trump is calling for unity. So I have with me tonight a guest from Lynn, Thomas P. Costin Jr. You must know of him. He has a long, brilliant career in government, and he has a million great stories to tell, and we're going to try to listen to some of those stories tonight. Tom actually had a possibility of joining the cabinet with President Kennedy back in 1961. He chose to seek the advice of his wife and stay home, but he's had a brilliant career since then. Let's talk about, well, you know, Tom speaks for youth. Tom, amazing story. How old were you when you ran for city councilor in Ward 7 in Lynn?
Well, I got out of the Marine Corps in 1946 after 2 years of the Marine Corps, and I got home in August. It was too late to go to Boston College, so I went to Northeastern Nights. And waiting for bus one night, that's when I saw a rally across the street in Haymarket Square, and Jack Kennedy was one of the candidates running for Congress. So I had an opportunity to meet him then, and when he got elected the next couple of weeks, I sent him a little note. And I decided that I wanted to be a candidate myself for the city council job in Lynn. Now, I'm only 20 years of age.
Right.
While I'm out.
You had to be 21 in order to serve, right?
Yeah, in order to serve. But I went during the day, and I knocked on every door in Ward 7, and in 1947, I was the youngest man ever elected to the city council while I'm a freshman at Boston College at age 21. So,
great story. So he's now 90 years old, but he's speaking for the youth of America. You encourage young people to run for office?
I certainly do. They've got to get involved. Everybody has to get involved. This is our government, and regardless of what your age is, you have ideas and suggestions that can be used to help this country.
Great.
I think I told you the story, Jim, that we lived next to my grandmother, and she came from Ireland, and she had 10 children, and her husband died early, and the 10 children, the oldest 5 children had to go out and go to work to help her. But I used to, my father and I would have, since we lived next door, would have tea with my grandmother either in the afternoon or at night. And so on weekends, all her children would come with the grandchildren to see her. And they always wanted to send her back to Ireland for a vacation, and she never wanted to go. And one night, I just asked her, I said, Nana, why don't you want to go back to Ireland? And she said in a deep, deep, beautiful Irish brogue, she called me brother. She said, brother, she said, why would I want to go back to Ireland? She said, when I was there, we had the Irish, with the potato famine, they couldn't feed me. The English would not let me go to school, and they would not allow me to go to my church. Look at me now, here in America. I'm free. I have my own home. I'm a queen in my own little castle. And then she said to me, the most important ingredient in America is freedom. And she said, the problem with the American people, they don't realize how important freedom is, and they will not realize how important freedom is until the day comes when they won't have it. And yesterday we had one of the biggest important dates. Every 4 years we had the opportunity for the American people to select the individual they want to be President of the United States. And that's one of the freedoms that we have to really work on and to save. Now what we have to do, though, is all of us, because we have a new president coming in the first of the year, we all have to get behind him and work to make sure that the things that are going to help America get done. We cannot have the Congress stonewall. We've got to have people have the ability to have compromise. The members of Congress, the House and the Senate, have got to have the ability to make changes for the American people, and that's what we have to work on. So I think that if we can get each individual citizen to realize that we all have a part in this. And the way we can help out is to know what's happening in Washington and to get in touch with our elected representatives to let our positions be known so we can get something done to make America still remain great. And that's what I would suggest to everybody listening to us right now.
Okay. So President-elect Trump has called for unity, which
Yes.
sound idea, and I
Yes.
think Hillary Clinton called for the same thing in her
Yes.
concession speech. But at the same time, we still have to watch what we're doing. I mean, the country is split right in half. One of the major issues is race, and what are we going to do with immigrants, undocumented immigrants? I think Hillary had a sound plan. I don't know. Well, President-elect Trump has said that he wants to send people back to Mexico, wherever they came from. I don't know how that works, practically speaking. I don't know if it's the sound thing to do. He's in a great position to just wipe the slate clean.
Well,
that issue.
I think that if he's going to be the president for all of us, I think what he has to do is work really in a very strong and open way with the Congress, because the members of the Congress represent the people in every state in our union. So by working with the Congress, I think we can probably get something done. It may not be everything that he wants to see, but it might be the right thing to compromise on trying to find a solution to this very important problem. What we have to realize, we are all immigrants. All of us are immigrants. I'm a grandson of an immigrant. All of us are immigrants, unless your father or mother are American Indian. And
That's
I don't
right.
think we have too many.
So am I.
Yeah. So
And we should never forget that. And we
No.
all had problems. Our families, my grandfather had problems with prejudice against Irish. And,
Right.
so what we face right now is this gridlock and this posturing. President Obama got Obamacare elected, the Affordable Care Act, got that adopted by the Congress, and he signed it into law several years ago. The Republican House of Representatives moved to eliminate Obamacare between 61 and 64 times. It made no sense. I mean, once you look at the numbers, you realize the Senate's probably not going to adopt it. Certainly the president would have vetoed it had it ever gotten to him.
Right.
So why would you waste all of that time when you could be solving real problems like infrastructure? That's something I think everybody can agree on.
Right.
We need better roads, highways,
Right.
and public transportation.
But Jim, I think that if the president just takes time, the president-elect,
Right.
just takes time to listen to the experts on both sides
Right.
of the issue. Most people said that Obamacare needs some work, and this is where the Congress comes in. What they have to do, take a look at it and then compromise on the areas that are causing the problems. And I think one of the areas is that they have to work together with the insurance companies across the country. Not state by state. It's going to be a national program. And I think that again, this is where the Congress itself has to come and take a play in it. Not just say we have to eliminate it.
Right.
Because we're talking about 11 million people. And that doesn't help the situation.
A little known provision of the Affordable Care Act said that if you pay for health care insurance for your workers, as I do, and if the administrative costs exceed a certain percent, then the insurance companies are required to reduce your premium or send you a check. The first year the Affordable Care Act passed, I got a check for about $1,200. Every year I would watch healthcare premiums go up. When that came into law, mine went down.
Yeah.
And so there's just a lot of misinformation out there. We have to all listen to one another and to the details of the law.
All right.
Look, President Kennedy, you were a friend of President Kennedy, and he came into office in 1961, and he built a cabinet. And one of the things that was very impressive about what he did was to appoint Republicans to the cabinet. He was a Democrat, and he appointed Secretary of Treasurer was a Republican, and I think the Secretary of Defense, Robert McNamara. I think there was somebody else.
Yes.
And I thought, at the time, I was just a kid too, but thought that was a brilliant move because that helped to unify the country. Do you think President Trump will do that?
I think he will. And the reason why I say that, I think that he'll have some people around him. I think the Vice President is going to be a very big help to the President on looking at some of these issues. And I think that with what he has done himself, Vice President Pence, I think that he'll be a great help to the President if he listens.
Right.
Yeah.
Who else do you think he will have advising him?
Well, I really don't know.
It was speculated a few days ago that Rudy Giuliani would become the next Attorney General. He indicated that he might not take the job if it were offered to him, and that former Speaker Newt Gingrich would become Secretary of State. He has a diplomatic personality that should be something to behold.
Well, again, I think these people who have worked in government before are going to help him a great deal because they realize that if the only way that they can be successful is by listening to people around them. And I think that if they can get the President to just do that, listen before he speaks, I think that's the most important piece of information I can give him. Before you make a determination, listen to both sides.
So you actually had an invitation to go to Washington from President Kennedy.
Yes.
And why did you turn that down?
Well, after he called me, I called my wife and I told her pack the bags, and she said, "Why?" I said, "Well, I just got a call from Jack Kennedy, and he wants me to go to Washington to work in the White House." And there was a pregnant pause, and she said, "Listen, if you think I'm going to take 5 small youngsters to Washington while you spend 24 hours at the White House, you're crazy." So she said, "I'll pack your bags if you want to go." So I called Jack right back, and the minute I called him, he said, "Wife problems." I said, "Yes." And then that's when he said to me, "What would you like to do?" And there had been a story in the Lynn item just 2 weeks before that Tom Wilkerson, who was the postmaster in Lynn, was going to retire. And I said to him, "Make me postmaster." And he said, "What?" I said, "Just make me postmaster." But he did more than that because right after that, when he became president, in April of '61, the National Mayors Association had a big meeting in Washington, and I invited the entire city council to go with me. And I set up a meeting at the White House, and we went there in the morning, and we were taken into the cabinet room, and they sent people in to tell us about the cabinet room and so forth. And while that was going on, Kenny O'Donnell came in and said, "Tom, the president wants to see you." So I went into the Oval Office and sat with the president. And at that time, the president, because he had been in Canada the week before, had hurt his back and he had crutches there. And while we were talking, Kenny O'Donnell came in and said, "Mr. President, you've got to go out and get the keys to your new limousine." And so he invited me to go, and I took the reporter from the Lynn item with a camera, and I had my picture taken while he received the keys to his brand new limousine that for the first time had a clear plastic bubble top that was bulletproof. And so I had my picture taken with that. But then when we get back in, the reason he wanted me to make my move to become postmaster right away is that he had certain jobs that he wanted me to do for him. And one of the things he wanted me to do was he told me he was going to he was going to put through an executive order for all federal buildings in the United States. And the executive order was this, that in all the federal buildings you could not have separate toilet facilities for white or black. You could not have separate eating facilities for white and black. You could not have separate eating places for white and black. And what my job would be with the Postal Service, since we were the largest civilian agency with 600 people, was to go down to the southern area into Mason-Dixon, below the Mason-Dixon line, where offices where they weren't going to do it.
Was that an executive order, or was that by statute?
This is an executive order that the president. There were 3 executive orders he put through. That was the first one, and then the second one he put through was that he wanted to make it that the Congress would not be the ones who would determine pay for federal employees, nor the work conditions. He wanted the unions representing the employees sit down with a local management in each agency and work out what the pay would be and also what the work conditions would be. And what he wanted me to do was to be part of that team, to be on the Postal Service management team to make sure that things went along the way he wanted them. And at that time, I had already put together a group in Lynn, and we had built at that time the first brand new alcoholic hospital that was devoted for alcoholism and also drug abuse. And it was the first brand new one. Every other hospital that did that in Massachusetts had been a rehab building, and this was the first one, and it's still in existence. It's Mount Pleasant in Lynn. And what I told the president at that time, I said, what I want to do if I'm going to be on this management committee with the Postal Service, I want to make sure that anybody who has a problem with alcoholism cannot be fired until they get the opportunity to get medical help. And so he agreed with that. So when I sat down for the first meeting on the management side, I made sure that I already had talked to the union members and told them I was going to be fighting to make sure that this would happen on the management side. And I wanted them to stand up and say, this is what we want on the union side. And we got it.
Was it put into a contract?
Yeah, it was in the contract. And even today, we have in the Postal Service, we have individuals whose only job it is to make sure that anybody with a problem with alcoholism gets the help and are not fired, to give them the opportunity. Because as I had told the president, I said, when you fire somebody, you just don't fire the individual. When you fire somebody, you're hurting the wife, you're hurting the children, you're hurting the marriage, you're hurting the whole atmosphere of home life. And so we should give the people an opportunity to take advantage of it. Mount Pleasant has been in existence in Lynn for the last 40 years. And each year they treat about 1,000 people. So
that's a great achievement.
And then other agencies picked up on this, and so this is what we have.
Let's go back to the when you're down below the Mason-Dixon line, and the separate but equal bathrooms and facilities.
Yeah.
How did that work out? Did you run into resistance?
I'll tell you, yes. One of the last places we had to go with that was defiant. They weren't going to do anything. Was down in Texarkana, Texas. Now, if you stand on the steps of the post office in Texarkana and look down the main street, on the right-hand side is Texas, on the left-hand side is Arkansas. And so the union would not go along with this. Now, Jack Kennedy had given, when I was in his office that time, where I had my picture taken with the automobile, he gave me his personal card, the president's card, and wrote down a number on the back of it. I had that. We tried to, for 3 days, get the unions to go along. They said no. On the end of the third day, I said to my 2 partners, I said, listen, please leave the room. And they said, what? I said, leave the room. I want to talk to these people. When they left, I took out the card from the president with his name on it. And I said to the head of the union, read the name on this card to your fellow members. And he said, well, it's the President of the United States. And there's a number on the back of it. He said, yes. I said, I'm going to give you 15 minutes to make a decision to go along with the President of the United States. And if you don't, I'm calling this number, and within hours, the President is going to nationalize the postal units in the National Guard in Arkansas and Texas, and come right into this post office and take you out of it. And it means that you'll lose your pensions, you'll lose your jobs. Now, if this is what you want, I'm going to give you 15 minutes. Within 7 minutes, they came out and said, we'll go along with it.
You're a tough bargainer.
No, it was the only way that I could let them know that
Right.
the president meant business.
yeah.
Okay, but what happened after that? On our way to Dallas, where we had to fly out of, we stopped at the Love Field, and one of my members, Warren Bloomberg, who was the postmaster of Baltimore, Maryland, wanted to get a haircut. So he had myself and the other member have a cup of coffee. When he came back from the haircut, he said to me, Tom, they don't like your friend here very much. I said, who are you talking about? He said, the President of the United States. I mentioned the fact the President was coming to Dallas in a couple of weeks. And the barber said to me, if that SOB comes here, he'll be shot.
Yeah.
So what we did, we took the name, went out to the barber shop, took the name of the barber and his number, his barber number. And then I told my two friends, I said, listen, every place we go, I want you to start a conversation with a cab driver, and any place we go. I'm not going to open my mouth because my Boston accent is too heavy. Now, no, I'm from Boston. And we did that night. And we developed 7 different people who used the words shot, assassinate, eliminate. The next morning, we went to the regional office of the Postal Service, and I met with the regional director. And I said to him, what is happening here in Texas? And I told him what we had picked up. He pulled open his drawer and pulled out 2 newspapers. And in those newspapers of that week were full-page ads inciting somebody to take the president's life.
So
I took those papers, came home and called the White House and set up a meeting to see the president on Monday. The problem was Monday was the 11th of November, which was the holiday, and the president was at the National Cemetery putting a wreath on the grave of the unknown soldier. So I met with Kenny O'Donnell, gave him the papers, and Kenny said, Tom, he said, what we're going to do for the first time, the president's going to use the limousine with a clear plastic top, bulletproof top. And the other thing we're going to do, Jackie is going to go on this trip for the first time to take away some of the glamour from the president. And I think we're going to be all right.
That was the day he died, November 22nd.
Yeah, and then the 22nd,
Yeah.
I went home for lunch, and I was having lunch, and my wife had the TV on in the other room. I heard 3 words, Kennedy, Dallas, and shot, and I wept. And I always, every day, I think to myself, why didn't I take out the card in my pocket and call that number?
We've heard a lot of rhetoric in the recent election about that kind of stuff, targeting and bullets and revolution. How do we wind that down? How do we wind that talk down in America? How do we get people just talking to one another?
I think
the way we should?
what we have to do, probably it's too late with some of the older people and so forth. We got to start right in the schools to tell people that this is not, cannot be allowed. This is not what America is all about. We have freedom, and we have the ingredients of freedom through everything that we do. And I just want people to realize that back when we had the people that made this country what it is, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, and everything else that came after it. It was made by men who compromised.
Right.
Compromised, and what we need today, as much as they needed it then, we need a compromise. Work together to accomplish something, and that's what we have to do.
So before the election on Tuesday, there was a lot of talk. There was an expectation, I think, by most people in the country that Mrs. Clinton was going to win the election. And there was talk about the split in the Republican Party, and the people who supported President-elect Trump were going to go after other Republicans in the Congress and cause trouble for the Speaker of the House. How do you think that will play out now? The advice from the Republican Party who studied the election of 2012 said that we need to do more with Hispanics, African Americans, and women. What do you think will happen with that now?
It's a sad commentary when we have to even think about, we have to do something about this. This is something we should learn at our mother's knee. This is what we have to tell our children.
Okay, but I don't think we
I
are.
know we have, but
Some
what we're
have
gonna,
and some
but what
haven't.
we're going to do, everyone who's in a position of power has got to make this part of their thinking and speech every day when it's necessary. And we've got to do this. This is what makes our country.
We're going to have to wrap up. I'm sorry.
No, we want to stay right
Oh,
here.
I want to hear some of your stories, but we're going to have to wrap it up. Thank you very much. This was
Thank
great,
you for having me. I
Tom.
appreciate
Yeah,
it, Jim.
you're a great servant to the people of
Well, thank you.
America.
You are too, Jim.
Yeah, thank you.
You and I go way back.
David Riley prepared some statistics, and we didn't get a chance to talk about them.